Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Moms Like Me podcast powered by SupportNow, where we get to interview incredible moms just like you that are navigating all sorts of life's major moments. I am so excited today to have a wonderful guest with us. I'm joined today by Lindsay Bachman, who is going to be sharing more about her journey as a rare disease mama, which she will tell you about just here in a second. So, Lindsay, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So, Lindsay, for those of the audience, rather, that don't know or aren't familiar with your story, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your sweet Landry and kind of what brought you to this community.
Yeah. Landry is about to turn 6. She was diagnosed in 2020, which is probably the worst timing ever to have something else thrown on us. She was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder called CHAMP1. In a nutshell, her body does not produce enough of the CHAMP1 protein, which is essential for neurological development. So she really just has a global medical problems, and it really just kind of encompasses her whole body essentially because her brain just did not finish developing. And as far as the community, I think that is probably the first thing I went looking for, because we had been searched for diagnosis for about, I think it was like 14 months of the diagnosis process. At that point, when we got it, we found out she was so rare. She was the 68th person in the world diagnosed with CHAMP1. I'm like, I need to find somebody somewhere who can, kind of guide, because you don't expect that. And nobody in your life has ever gone through it before.
Lindsay, I'm curious, did you ever have any indications in utero or like throughout your pregnancy that something could be different about Landry?
There were some concerns, I think, that I had. And I think probably looking back, like in my gut, I might have known that there was something going on. I carried way too much amniotic fluid. It was generally just not an easy pregnancy. It was a traumatic birth, but nothing that my doctor seemed overly concerned about. Looking back, there were some things going on that I wish I would have maybe pushed on, but I just didn't know any better. And everything so easily explained. But it was not a pleasant pregnancy.
Yeah. And so I want to learn a little bit more. So the labor was challenging. Were you in the NICU? Kind of walk me through those early months or weeks and months.
Labor was challenging, but normal as far as hospital discharge. We did not do any NICU time, which I think is pretty rare in this community or this circle of moms. I started to notice a couple months in that Landry was just, I hate to put it this way, but it really just seemed like there was not much going on mentally for her. Like, it really just seemed like I knew she wasn't tracking on time. She wasn't making any eye contact. Um Not what you would expect to see from a 2, 3, 4 month old baby. And I'm thankful that she was my second, because I knew. And I don't know, like, going into this, had she been my first, I might not have known any different. But I had a textbook pregnancy and baby the first time around. So I knew something was going on. At 2 months, I brought it up with our pediatrician, and she wasn't super concerned. The eyes and like focusing and tracking, all of that can be slower to develop. So it wasn't until 4 months, that well baby checkup, that she really saw exactly what I was talking about, and we kind of started.
Isn't it crazy, Lindsay, that your gut just was so spot on so early?
Yeah. And I think even looking back to pregnancy, there are probably some things that I just was maybe in denial about or worried about. I think I knew. I think I knew.
It's so interesting because I think moms often struggle with the balance of what their intuition
Mhm.
and their anxiety.
Mhm.
And then, of course, you've got the third party, the doctors, the therapists that are, I think, always trying to err on the side of caution, cautiously optimistic, because these things are rare when they happen. I'd love for you to explain to me a little bit more as you all went through the journey of trying to understand a diagnosis. You knew something was off. You knew something was, quote, wrong. How hard was it for you to process that life with her was going to look different than it would a neurotypical child?
I think by the time we received her diagnosis, I was just so relieved that we had one. I really did a lot of that processing type work, I think, prior. Like I said, I was confident that there was something to find. I just hoped that we would find it. I know, several families are, it's not uncommon to be undiagnosed and have something that hasn't even been discovered yet. So I just felt a lot of relief at getting a diagnosis. In fact, one of my friends was coming over that same day, and I just happened to get the phone call before her and her kids came. And she was like the first person I saw, and she knew how I felt, and she just hugged me. It was almost like a happy, or when happy is not the right word, but it was relief to know that now we can just move forward. I don't know when a lot of that processing work kind of happened or realizing that things were going to look different. Probably it's just come, with time. Um, and I look back and I'm like, she's almost 6. That seems like not a lot of time, but at the same time, it's like I don't remember life before her. I don't remember anything else.
Did your husband have the same experience, or did he struggle differently than you?
I think he struggled differently, and I think he still struggles, to be honest, with that aspect. I think I don't want to speak for every couple, but I think men just handle things like that differently and aren't necessarily like day in and day out. I'm in our situation, my husband is the one going to work every day, and they just experience things differently, and I think some of that has hit him harder maybe than it did me.
So, what does a day in a life look like for you and for Landry?
We're actually getting ready to start a transition period between schools and going from pre-K to kindergarten, which is like a whole other topic in itself. She is a decent sleeper with a lot of help. We have to do nighttime meds on a pretty strict schedule to get her to sleep. But then she will sleep actually until a pretty late sleeper. She's on continuous feeds through her J tube, so we don't have to like wake up at a certain time to do any feedings. Medication is usually 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and 9 p.m. And then any rescue meds that she might need in between there, respiratory treatments and the machines and stuff that we have at home, inhalers. That's twice a day, unless she's sick and we need to increase that. And her school day is from 12:30 to 3 in the afternoon. So we kind of have our mornings at home. Um, and then she goes to school for the afternoon, and then just a pretty typical everybody's home in the late afternoon, evening, dinner, bedtime, medication, respiratory routine again, and then do it all over the next day.
What's the relationship like between Landry and your other daughter?
Oh gosh, it's amazing. That's something that I am so thankful that I get to witness. It's hard to explain. I think I don't know if it's different with sons and daughters. Um I can obviously only speak to having 2 girls, but I she just has that nurturing almost kind of mother hen personality, being the oldest, and then especially being protective over a little sister who, can't necessarily speak for herself. Or sometimes I'll joke, I'm Chandler knows what Landry needs, and she scares me half the time because she's like such a fierce little advocate. I'm like, it's great when it's geared towards everybody else, but or sometimes sometimes she's a little too fierce. Um, but no, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. And actually, in the next few weeks, when Landry transitions schools, she's going to be at the same school as Chandler, which will be a change. But she is so excited.
It's so wonderful that she's taken on that role with such confidence and such zeal. I mean, that's wonderful.
Yes, yes. And we actually are really lucky to live in a small, close knit town and school district. So a lot of her friends, Chandler's friends, love Landry. And there's just a lot of excitement around her coming to the school. So yeah, she's really just taken to her role very naturally. Um, and it's special to watch.
Talk to me a little bit about the support you needed. You mentioned earlier that one of the things early on you were seeking was effectively companionship. You were looking for someone or someones that had any experience with this rare disease to talk to. Beyond finding people to talk to about this, how has community played a role in helping y'all navigate the day to day of parenting and nurturing Landry?
I think the one thing that comes really first to mind is people who make an attempt to learn her and understand her and just help us in doing everything they can to be able to interact with her or understand her. That's been really, really important to me. And I've found it interesting that sometimes it's people that you would never expect that show up in that way. And then there's people that you think would and don't. So that can be kind of eye opening at the same time. I think other specific things, people are incredibly financially generous when I feel like maybe they don't know what else to do. And I don't know that I would have ever come right out and say, like, we needed that, but I would never either say that it hasn't been helpful. I mean, of course, it's a blessing. Or restaurant meals get expensive when you're in the hospital, or even the cafeteria gets expensive, and things that you would have at home that you might need to purchase because you're not there. It's really little things that I wouldn't have even thought of prior. And then I think something else specific is meals are always so supportive and helpful. A couple weeks ago, we were at church and a couple had brought us a meal there to church to take home and put in our freezer. And he handed it to Pete and said, he said that it's not much. And I cut him off and I said, no, it's a lot, because not having to think about dinner on any given night it's big. It is a lot. And it might not seem like much. We had another family friend the other night just want to bring our family meal, and things like that are really, really helpful.
I love hearing that. And what I think one of the most beautiful things about what you mentioned is, Landry's 6. So you've been on this journey for a while, and yet your community is finding ways to show up for you continuously.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think because I continue to be very open about our story and our journey. I share appropriately a lot of details about what we go through. I'm open about things and feelings. And when it comes to social media, it's been important to me to, I often say, I want to be what I wanted to find in the beginning. And people don't know to help, or that you might need help or support unless you tell them. And you don't have to be specific and ask for like a certain financial need or a certain amount. The people are just generally very caring and supportive and want to help. So I think the more you share, the more it allows people to do that. It can be really humbling to need the support and the different resources. And even like at the state level, agencies that you never thought you would be the one to need. It can be pretty humbling, but I think to not allow people to support you is really not doing anything but denying them the blessing of helping and supporting. And that's been like really helped me reframe some of that when it comes to like asking for help or asking for support.
Let me summarize a little bit of that, because I think there's so much goodness in what you just shared, which is that people can't support unless they know.
Mm-hmm.
And that requires a degree of vulnerability and transparency and authenticity that I think is very natural to be squirmish. People can be squirmish to share because it's uncomfortable, and you're unveiling the things about your family that may not look great or perfect or ideal.
Yeah.
So it's like the first step is just to be open and to continuously stay honest, because as you've alluded to, this is not something that's just going to go away. This is something that you and your family will navigate forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the other thing that you mentioned that's so important here is to not let the guilt of receiving get in the way of allowing people to show up in the ways that make them feel good.
Yes.
It sounds so simple, and it is so hard.
I know. It's so easy to be the helper, but then to be the one that benefits from the help is, yeah, it's not easy. It's like I said, it's humbling, not always in a in a great way.
How has this experience changed the way you support people that you love or that are navigating difficult seasons of life?
I think I've learned some very practical lessons on how to help. Something that I always say is when you ask someone going through a life altering time or major life moment, when you ask them what they need, they probably don't even know. They probably don't even know. So I have learned from personal experience that if you want to do something for a friend, say, I am going to bring you this dinner on this night at this time, but let me know if that doesn't work. Or just really practical tips on that. And then also on a broader scale and more general, just knowing that everyone is going through something. Everybody that we pass on the street or come in contact with throughout a day is going through something that we have no idea about. And I think it just has made me probably just a more understanding human, to be honest, like less judgmental, and just everybody's got something.
Everyone does have something. Some people can be more open about it, but there's layers upon layers of what people are navigating on any given day and any given moment. What, to the degree that you're comfortable sharing this, what does the future look like for Landry?
That's a great question. There are a few CHAMP1 people, I guess you would say, that are living into adulthood. The foundation is aware of a man in his 40s, and he's not living independently. I don't know, honestly, if he's living in some sort of group home or with parents, but he's alive. Landry specifically has a lot of medical aspects that not a lot of other CHAMP1 kids seem to have. We actually are getting ready to revisit genetics and see if maybe there's something else to be found, because there's a lot that lines up and there's a lot that doesn't. So we just wonder if there's not something else at play. I will say that she has had some regression in certain areas of skills, like feeding. So I don't know at what point we expect that to continue and or maybe affect other skills. And her medical needs and complications have escalated, I would, in the last 6 months, and we've had some scary times, and I it's really hard to say. I don't know what the future looks like for her, but we don't. And we have no idea what a life expectancy might look like. And I think you're going to make me cry. I think that you live differently when you don't know. You live differently.
I really appreciate you being open about that, because I think the unpredictability of it all is what makes it all so challenging, is that every day looks so different. One moment you could be fine and she's at school, the next day you're back at the hospital, and it seems like the swings, there's just a lot of volatility that can be hard for people to really wrap their heads around, because no one day, no one week looks the same. Never really knowing what at any point could get better, could get worse. And I mean, it sounds like with such few cases in the world, it's so hard to even benchmark against in general, because there's such a small population that are that's navigating this like you.
Yeah. And even within however few there are, it's almost like it really should be on a spectrum, because there are different mutations on the CHAMP1 gene. There's kind of where the mutation happened affects skills, and there's such a spectrum of disability and medical needs within even such a small number that Landry truly is one of a kind. Um, but that's scary when you don't really know what to expect.
Well, Lindsay, I am just so grateful for the time today to learn more about Champ's disease, to learn more about Landry, to learn more about your family, your community, how you all have rallied together in a really unique circumstance. And like I said at the beginning here, it's so important to me to have these conversations, because not only does it help shine a light on this disease so more people can be educated, but it also hopefully will touch at least one other medical mama out there who might be experiencing something similar, and to teach them that they're not alone. And like you said before, to set out to kind of be the voice you were looking for. And I assure you, you already are. Um, and so I just want to say thank you. And I also want to give you an opportunity, if there are people that want to learn more and follow along with your story, where can they find you to stay updated?
Yeah, my Instagram handle is happy go Landry. I love a good play on words. So when I thought of that, I was super excited. I share a lot there. I write a little bit. I I think my bio reads I put medical motherhood into words, and I really try to do that for others, but also it's a coping tool for me. It's kind of a win-win. So yeah, I'm there, and would love to have you.
And then as a final note before we wrap up, Lindsay's story stood out to me. We are fortunate enough to have her using SupportNow for all of her support needs. And so I can speak for many of the people on our team that we continue to pray for you and for Landry. And really, again, if anyone out there has somebody or knows someone that's experiencing something similar to this, to consider looking at SupportNow as a tool, as a platform to either just get updates out there, to raise money, to organize meals, or to structure volunteers. That is what we are here for. So thank you all for joining us today.